remember in our last video, the engine was blown and it went over to Gasket Masters. They did an excellent job putting a new engine in, but now we have another problem. So we have an alignment issue. You'll notice this wheel is straight, and let's come over to this wheel. So it's crashed, and we got a pile of suspension parts, the subframe, control arm, strut, half shaft. We're gonna pull all that out and replace it on the Bad Luck Prius. All right, let's just take both front wheels off and sort of get some access to underneath. Well, if we're stuck here, we're really going to be in trouble when we have to take the whole subframe out. Oh, boy. Look at that. Well, that's a big hit. So we got a new half shaft, which is this. We got a new control arm. And we'll start by pulling the subframe off, I guess.
There's a rip in the subframe, like it ripped away from the subframe right in here.
Yeah, right there, right? Here's the part where the subframe is toast.
Hands in the way.
So that's why we got a new subframe. All right. Okay, so now I'm trying to determine what will happen if I remove the subframe. Will the drivetrain stay hanging in place safely without the subframe here? There's one upper mount and another upper. Okay, so we'll be safe. Cracking loose a bunch of big guys. Woohoo! Interesting, I see an oil leak here. Took the hit on this side, so maybe that's just related to an oil change. I hope it didn't crack the case of the engine or something. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Look at that. Big chunk of crashed Prius. So again, the reason we bothered to take this big chunk out is it's torn away there. So we'll grab our junkyard parts. Maybe we'll pull some other busted stuff off of that side first to get ready for our giant wheelbarrow full of junkyard parts we have at the ready. So we couldn't really tell for sure what was damaged on this car. It's really hard to detect if a part is bent or not. They're not just straight bars that you can look down. You know, they're curved parts, so it's hard to tell what's bent with just a cursory inspection. What we did to be safe was we got a lot of parts. So we went to the junkyard and we got a whole subframe and, you know, a knuckle and a half shaft and a strut. being that these are junkyard parts, there's two things I consider with junkyard parts. One is they're very good quality because they're real Toyota parts. They're not like those low quality knockoff parts that aren't up to the original specification, but they are potentially damaged. So this subframe and A-arm are broken in the same way on the other side. So this car that this came from was in a similar accident on the other side. So obviously the stuff on that side we're not going to use. We're going to take some stuff from this side and piece it all together with the one more good subframe we bought separately from a different junkyard. Probably half of this job or more is just finding all these parts. So now that we have everything, or what we think will be everything we need, we'll just put the new stuff back on. Okay, so I transferred over the anti-sway bar, the motor mount, and the control arms. And I'm going to put the whole subframe under, raise it up, get these two back bolts, and then I'll start to fish in. I got to get the steering rack, that little bracket that holds that wire, and all this other stuff in. So first we'll drive this puppy in here. Good. Okay. All right. Once more. Send her up. All right. It's this thing that happened all day.
Pull the knuckle off? Yeah. Get out of there.
Okay, so we don't know if this knuckle is bad and if this strut is bad, but the impact was so significant that we're assuming these are bad. Now, I have done similar repairs before and, not replaced the knuckle and strut and then realized it needs a knuckle and strut. So just sort of based on an educated guess, we're just gonna flop those parts out because, time is money. So we'll get this guy out of the way. A lot more will become clear when we go to the alignment rack. That's really the sort of acid test of any major suspension repair. Can it be aligned? So we will look at that when we align this car later, not today. All right, I'm bolting the rack down before it's too late. It's up in a hole that I can't get to. The rack is kind of loose now, which is not what we want. I'm just kind of spin it up with the electric ratchet, torque it with this big boy. Okay. Got that one. Let's see, is this one? That one. Okay. I'll probably just double wrench it on this because it's so tight in here. There. Okay. You can tell this chassis is much stiffer than the old one by how it drives, but also just by looking at it, there's a lot more steel here and more bracing than the old ones. Having driven these Gen 4s, they really do handle well. I mean, at least compared to older Priuses. Okay, so we've replaced almost all our parts here. I'm just tightening down a few last things. I'm already happy to see that this wheel is straight. If you remember, initially it was pointed way. We are closing in on this job. I'm really interested to see what happens when we test drive. Okay, suspension back together. You know, it looks terrible because we haven't done the body panels yet, but the goal here is that it drives. So, you know, likely there are some air lights on. So we only spent about $1,000 in parts, and we got the car back together and drivable. In the next video, we'll see the bodywork and alignment.